Welcome back to Confirmation Ministries. This is Raven Shepherd. We didn't get many questions last time, so what I'm going to do is start a study over the book of Genesis found in the Old Testament. So first I'd like to introduce the material and tell you where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. I'd like to introduce some books that I've read that has helped me with this study. The first one is Old Testament Theology by Bruce Waltke. Until recently professor at Reformed Theological Seminary. This book, The Pentateuch as Narrative by John Selheimer. When he wrote this book, he was professor at Trinity Evangelical Seminary. Also, a book that's been very helpful to me is Dominion and Dynasty by Stephen Dempster. Dr. Paul Hoskins at Southwestern Theological Seminary recommended this book to him. We want to give credit where credit is due. So these men have helped me in understanding a little bit about what the Old Testament is about. Primarily though, we're going to be using God's holy word, sacred scripture, to find out what sacred scripture is about. So way of introduction, I'd like to talk about the Old Testament. First, I'd like to say that the Old Testament is indeed not old. In fact, I would rather use the term First Testament as opposed to Old Testament. Old is a pejorative sense. Many may think of old as antiquated, outdated, not useful. But the scriptures, the First Testament is very useful, not outdated, not outmoded. In fact, it is revelation from God. So we will try to not use old. We'll try to use, in this study, the First Testament. Also, I'd like to talk about what a testament is. What a testament is. Our Bible is divided into First and Second Testaments. Now, a testament is a will, and it comes only into effect after one dies, and it benefits the beneficiary of the will. Well, a covenant is quite different than a testament. A covenant is a religious sanctioned act that has authority immediately while individual is living. So the scriptures are divided between First Testament and Second Testament, or First Covenant and Second Covenant. I'd like to talk about the Old Testament, and before we do that, before we jump into Genesis, I'd like to say a few things about the First Testament. The First Testament is organic in nature. In other words, what I mean by that, if we're going to understand the New Testament and what the gospel is about, who is Jesus, why is he necessary, we must first understand the Old Testament. It's organic in nature. Just as you have a seed, and from a seed comes a tree, the tree is in a real sense contained in the seed. Well, the First Testament, the gospel of Jesus Christ, is contained in an organic sense, or flows from the Old Testament. God didn't just drop down revelation out the sky. This has been a historical development. Our faith is historical. God acts in time and history to bring about revelation. And since we're talking about revelation, I'd like to first say that the Bible, sacred scripture, is infallible. And what I mean by that, it is right when in regards to who God is, his will, his ways. The Bible is not a scientific book. It's not a mathematic book. It's not a book on psychology. It's not a self-help book. What the Bible is revelation on who God is and his purpose and our purpose. So it's inerrant when it reports, and it does report about God's character, about his nature. The Bible is also infallible. It is without error when reporting about God's nature. It is without error or infallible when reporting about God's purpose for humanity. So this is our authority. We don't stand on top of the Bible. We don't stand alongside the Bible. In fact, the Bible is our authority. We stand underneath it. I like to say in closing, the Bible interprets itself several ways: historically, thematically, and canonically. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean by that canonically. In Genesis chapter 1, you have God hovering over waters. Well, the waters are a repeated theme. We find that Noah with the waters, the flood. We find in the Exodus the waters being parted. We find Jesus' first miracle, the turning the water into wine. We also find Jesus walking on water. We also find Jesus calming the seas. And in the book of the Revelation of John, we find God recreating the heavens and the earth, and we find out that there's no more sea. So waters is a theme throughout the Bible, so we will try to interpret the Bible thematically like that. Also, the First Testament, First Covenant is threefold. It contains the law, it contains the prophets, it contains the writings. We'll talk more about that later. I would like to note, though, the first 5 books of the Old Testament really are one book. We call it the Pentateuch. Mark 12:26 calls the Pentateuch the book of Moses. The first 5 books are really one book. For storage sake and size sake, these books, this one book was divided into 4 books for storage sake. They didn't have books or codices as we have them now. They wrote on scrolls, so in order to store these scrolls, they had to divide this one book up into 5 for storage space. So we're going to interpret the Pentateuch as a whole, as one book, as opposed to 5 books. Now, there are major themes throughout the Bible. People ask me, what is the Bible about? What does it say? What does it mean? I would say this. The Bible is about 3 things, and we will follow these themes throughout all of Scripture. The Bible is first about God's kingdom. Second, it's about God's covenant. Third, it's about God's mediator. So if you're in the elevator with anybody and all you got is 5 minutes and they ask you what the Scripture is about, what is all sacred Scripture is about? If you don't have much time, tell them it's about God's kingdom, it's about God's covenant, it's about God's mediator. Until next time, we scream in the Father. Confirmation Ministries. Out.